Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
For centuries, ancient cultures knew the secrets to longevity, vitality, and healing. Now, modern science is catching up. Ageless Blueprint is a podcast that will reveal the modern secrets of better health and a better life. Join Dr. Eldred Taylor here today and every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on W4HC Radio at W4HC.com. As together we discover the secrets to better health through science and spirituality. A Better Life with Ageless Blueprint starts now. Here's your host, Dr. Eldred Taylor.
Hello and good morning. It is Wednesday, and that means it's time for the Ageless Blueprint. I'm Dr. Taylor. I am the hormone doctor and the spiritual MD. And as always, I'd like to talk about what life is about these blueprints, about how the menstrual cycle and hormones and reproduction and all of that is ageless. And here's what I want to talk about today is that there are a lot of people who are on hormone replacement. There's a lot of physicians and healthcare providers who are providing hormone replacement. But the key is, are they really clear? Okay, is the patient really clear about what this hormone is, what it does, how does it affect me, how does it affect my menstrual cycle, how does it affect cycles, balance, and transitions? That's what I talk about, is how is this monitored? What am I supposed to do if this happens? What happens if this happens? That's why I'm saying I don't think there's a lot of clarity. That's why in the study, only 9% of physicians felt like they knew how to handle menopause. So that's a problem. That's why I'm saying there's a lot of hormone replacement advice being given out on social media. I hear it all the time. And that's one of the reasons why I did this podcast, to try and bring some clarity into this hormone replacement arena. Because now I learned this, almost 30 years ago. And the problem is that I changed and switched because I saw what I was doing was not helping people. So it's like, if my labs are normal, why do I feel so bad? And that's what was happening with my wife. So what I did is, like, I had to look for an alternative. And the problem is that most physicians and most of the governing bodies are still basing their treatment on these old ideas. And here's the other confusing problem, is that the statements that come from these governing bodies, it seems to change over time. It seems to change over what's popular at that time. So now it's estrogen and testosterone pellets. Back then it was Hormone Provera. And then in the middle, there was no hormones. So there's all of these changing ideas. But if there is an original blueprint, why don't we follow that blueprint and stop trying to go with the latest fad with hormone replacement, or the latest ad on TV, no matter who the movie star is who's advertising it? If it doesn't follow these certain guidelines, you need to, I won't say reject it, but you need to examine it further. So we're going to talk about the 10 mistakes that are found on the internet, or that you may have heard from a doctor, or you may have heard from one of your friends that this worked for me. And I see that on the Facebook groups, is that people are asking other people how to handle menopause. And so again, all of those women are on hormone replacement, or they're thinking about hormone replacement. And instead of having one source material, they go and it's just crowdsourcing. So I don't think we should crowdsource hormone replacement. I believe that we should follow the blueprint and not go against what nature and how the hormones actually work. All right, so let's go to the slides now. I'll put on my glasses so I can see my slides, but I'm trying to cut down on this glare. But let's look at this. Okay, the 10 myths that keep hormone confusion alive. Wrong test, wrong hormones, wrong pattern. And that is the main problem, is that we start out with the wrong test. And that begins this whole cascade, is that we look at the blood, we look at everything is normal when they're premenopausal, and then when they're postmenopausal, all of a sudden everything's low. And we don't understand it. Okay. Doctors don't understand it. I didn't understand it, but you have to do the right tests. And blood is not the right place to look for fat soluble hormones. Okay. When I say fat soluble, that means the sex steroids, all of those are made from cholesterol. And that's why you don't get fooled in thinking that you don't need cholesterol, because you do. You just don't need too much of it. All right, now let's go to the next slide. I think I can control these myself. All right. See, here's the other thing. Women will come in and we do these intakes, and they'll list all of these problems: brain fog, irregular cycles, can't sleep, migraine headaches, all of these symptoms, anemia. And everybody, they partition them off to whatever specialist they think might be able to handle the problem. So if you can't sleep, you get a sleep study. If your moods are abnormal, then you go to a therapist or you go to a psychiatrist. If your thyroid, it's all of these symptoms, PCOS, fibroids, all of these symptoms, they actually do have one common denominator, and that it is a hormone issue. But what happens is you look in the blood and the hormones look normal. You know there's a hormone problem, even though you don't have proof. Most of the time, you're still treated with hormones. You're still given birth control pills. You're still given estrogen or testosterone, even though the blood test said that there's nothing there. So you gotta question it. That's what I'm saying. If my hormones are normal, then why are you treating me with hormones? There must be an explanation for that. All right, next slide. All right, there we go. All right, so here's the core mistake. We think that everything is separated out. Okay, we think that the everything works in isolation. So if you look over here on this one, you see that everything looks like it's all separated out. You have your lungs, you have your heart, but you have to understand that all of this is connected. If you look at that second diagram, all of it is connected. And if you look at that middle part is the rest and digest system. And that's what mostly gets turned off. That's why your heart beats fast. That's why you breathe shallow. That's why you have brain fog. That's why your gut doesn't work, because those are parasympathetic. And you see that on the muscles, that's sympathetic. And when you're in fight or flight, all the blood goes to the exterior. It all goes out here. Okay. And that's why that's so detrimental, because the organs that restore your memory, restore your gut function. All of that is when you're resting and digesting. And progesterone helps you to do that. We are so focused on estrogen and testosterone, but what we have to understand that this system is all interconnected. So if stress is an issue, it's going to cause a problem with everything in the middle, and that includes your reproductive system. It's going to have a problem with your gut, with your liver. All of that is going to be affected when you're in survival mode, because all you want to do is run or fight. So all of the resources goes out here and none stays there. So that is a major problem. And that's why when you don't get this right, it seems to be a whole body effect. Okay, you can't sleep, your joints hurt. Everything gets thrown out of balance when you're in this fight or flight state, when you're in this sympathetic state. So a better framework is to look at it on a different way. You can't solve the problems that you have thinking the same way you've always thought. So the only way you're going to be able to solve a problem that we created by looking at blood only, the only way you're going to solve that problem is to think about that problem differently. That's what I had to do. I was like, if the blood is not telling me what I wanted to tell me, what could I look at that may give me a better picture of what is going on? Now, I'm going to tell you, I did not think of that on my own. I actually had a patient who came in who asked me if I knew anything about saliva testing and progesterone. And she gave me a cassette tape, and it talked about what I'm telling you right now. And it changed the course of my career 25 years ago. And we wrote a book, Are Your Hormones Making You Sick? And we wrote another book called The Stress Connection, because we finally understood. When I say we, it's my wife and I, because she is really my test case. She's a physician also. And that is the key. You have to test to give you something that you can work with. And I was a guest on a podcast yesterday, and I was talking about is that if saliva or some other test is 10, 20, 30, or 40% better than blood, it's better than just relying on something that we know. That's why all of these women start to talk about how they feel awful, but their lab tests are normal. That's because you haven't done the proper test. All right. Now, so we overlook progesterone and cortisol, and that is the key, is that you have to make sure stress is not involved. That's why we wrote the book, The Stress Connection. And you need to make sure that you're looking at all of the hormones: estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, thyroid hormones. All of that needs to be a part of the picture. So let's go through some of these myths. And I really want you to even, write these down. Is that menopause means you have no estrogen? That is a myth. Now, I will tell you where that myth came from. It actually came from doctors like me, because that's what I was taught 30 years ago. It was just cut and dry. All menopausal women are estrogen deficient. And that is what I believed for the longest, until I started using the correct test. When I used the correct test and I saw the estrogen that's being made in the fat tissue. So even though you are menopausal, your fat tissue still makes estrogen, but you don't see it in the blood. And I'll tell you why in a minute. And the only way you're going to see it, you have to see what the tissue is doing, because estrogen is made in the fat tissue. It's made in the fat tissue, I believe, because women, even though they're not reproductive anymore, they still want to keep their femininity. So God made it where you have extra fat tissue so you can make extra estrogen. So just because you're menopausal does not mean you have no estrogen. You may not be able to see it in the blood, but you still have estrogen around. So I want you to write that down. Menopause does not necessarily mean that I'm low in estrogen. It is not a cut and dry. Everybody is victim to that. That's not the case. All right, next slide. All right, so blood testing. So the next thing I want you to write down is that blood testing is not telling you the full story. So you can stop going and getting your blood drawn and asking them to test your hormones. It's not going to tell you anything. Okay. And so don't get so frustrated when your labs are normal, because you got to understand the blood test is not the only lab in the world. Okay. Those are routine labs, and that's fine to look at liver function, all of that. But you have to do specialized tests if you want a specialized question answered. If you want to know what your gut health is like, the blood is not going to tell you anything. You have to get a stool sample. If you want to know if you have bacteria in your urine, a blood test is not going to tell you unless you're septic. That means that the infection is spread. So you have to do a urine test. If you want to know what a piece of tissue is, you have to do a biopsy. So so what you can say is that my blood tests are normal, but I don't know about my actual hormone test and how that is affecting my tissue, my organs. That's what you want to know. So don't believe that the blood test tells you everything about everything. There's food sensitivity tests. There's all types of tests that you can have if you want a special question answered. So don't think that, if my blood tests are normal, that means everything in my body is normal. It just doesn't happen. All right, so what is this? Myth number 3? Yeah, this has been a recent development, because 20, 25 years ago, we never thought about giving women testosterone for energy. We didn't think about, as an OBGYN, we didn't think about anything. We thought about energy like most doctors do now. How is your thyroid and what does your blood count look like? But there's another source of energy called cortisol that really nobody measures. I won't say nobody. Most doctors or patients don't understand it, don't know about it. but testosterone is not a natural source of energy for women. And I don't know how many times I have to say this, but it's not. And here's what I want you to understand is that you may use testosterone for muscle mass. Some people use it for like cystitis or whatever. But for energy, it may give you an initial boost, but that is not your long-term source of energy. And that's why I did a podcast just last week, is saying that the number one symptom in perimenopausal women was not low libido or weight gain, and I would have thought it was sleep, but it was exhaustion, that was their main symptom. 52% of the women said exhaustion was their main symptom. And so I think that's where the testosterone and energy production entered the arena. But the real issue is cortisol, and cortisol is your daily energy supply. It goes along with your circadian rhythm. Rebel, we were talking about is that the sun is supposed to turn on your circadian rhythm, give you a cortisol surge during the when you wake up, to wake you up, and then it should dissipate along the day. But when you're under a lot of stress for a long time, this system gets depleted. And some people call it adrenal fatigue. People don't like that, but that's what it is. It gets worn out because you've been under so much stress. And that's what happens during perimenopause. A lot of things are going on. Your body is changing. Your family life is changing. Kids are going off to college. You have elderly parents that you're feeling responsible for. So a lot of things drain your energy. Now, here's the problem. When you look in the blood, in women, testosterone is always low. That's what I learned, and that's what's in the textbook. Women always have a low amount of testosterone in the blood. So all of a sudden, just because you came in and complained of energy, now someone tests something that may have always been there that was not affecting you before, but they see something that looks a little bit out of reference range, and then you get testosterone. And then after a while, it may work for some women, but I won't say usually, but several women will report that they begin growing hair where they don't want it and losing hair where they do want it. So they get thinning hair here, and they also get mustaches and all of those types of things. And we'll talk about how that happens as you get older anyway. But testosterone is not your energy source. So I would really recommend that you do the saliva testing so you can see what is actually going on in your tissue. Your tissue may have plenty of testosterone, but if you look at your cortisol, I will tell you, I have done a lot of these cortisol tests, and I would tell you 90% of those are abnormal. So by the time you come to me, I can almost guarantee you that cortisol has gotten involved, and that's why it's been confusing for you, and it's been confusing for the doctors, because they don't see that hidden element. And we didn't see that hidden element until about 2 or 3 years after we wrote the book, Are Your Hormones Making You Sick? And we said there's something else involved here. And then we discovered that, hey, it's cortisol. These women are stressed, and cortisol is throwing off their ovulation. It's throwing off everything in that middle part of the body, their gut, their brain. Everything there gets depleted of energy sources because everything's going to the muscles. So I hope that's a clear explanation of that, why your energy gets redistributed and what needs to be done to try to get that energy distribution corrected. And that's what we talk about with nervous system regulation. How do we regulate the sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves? And that's what meditation is about. That's what prayer is about. That's what breath work is about. All about how do we turn back on that rest and digest system, because the sympathetic system is in overload with all of the information that we're getting, information that we want, information that we don't want. It's always putting us in fight or flight. The news does it. It's a great marketing tactic. It's a political tactic to keep you in fear, keep that sympathetic nervous system rolling so that you don't have the energy to really think through problems. And that's why you get all of these simplistic answers about everything. So let me move on. All right. This should be, for me, this is like the most irritating one, is you don't need progesterone if you don't have a uterus. And again, that's what I was taught 30 years ago. You don't need progesterone if you don't have a uterus. Now, let me explain this. Back then, we weren't even using progesterone. Okay, we were using something called medroxy progesterone acetate. That is what you may call Provera, a Depo-Provera, and that is really not progesterone. That is a subset. It's actually it's actually synthetic progesterone. And what they do is they add a carbon, add a hydrogen or whatever to make it different, and then you can patent it. So you don't need Provera, because the only reason why they made Provera is when they were putting people on estrogen, when they thought everybody had an estrogen deficiency, they saw that these women were getting endometrial cancer, they were having heavy bleeding. So they made Provera in order to control the bleeding if you had too much estrogen, if you had a uterus. So they thought that the only reason why you needed progesterone is to slow down bleeding if you had too much estrogen. But that's not the whole idea around progesterone. That's what the progestin did, the altered progesterone. But progesterone affects all portions of your body. It affects your brain. It affects your heart rate. It affects your sympathetic nervous system because it's calming. It affects your sleep. It affects your stress. It buffers you against stress because it's a calming hormone. It makes GABA in the brain. GABA is a calming neurotransmitter. So if you don't have progesterone, even if you don't have a uterus, you're going to have trouble with sleeping. You're going to have trouble with brain fog. You're going to have trouble with your moods. You're going to have trouble with your stress if you don't have enough progesterone. That's why you measure that, so you can see the balance of estrogen and progesterone. And the other reason why you want progesterone is because estrogen stores fat for energy, and progesterone burns that fat for energy. So if you don't have enough progesterone, that's why you can gain weight in perimenopause and menopause, just because of this lack of progesterone. And let me make this very clear, is that, remember how I told you that you have a backup estrogen system? Even if you are postmenopausal, you still can make estrogen. But let me tell you what 100% of women will do if they live long enough. They will stop ovulating. No doubt about it. There's not a lot of Sarahs in the Bible that have babies in their 90s. But when you don't ovulate, you don't make progesterone. So now you have a backup estrogen system, but you don't have a backup progesterone system if you don't ovulate. So instead of being taught that 100% of women are estrogen deficient in postmenopause, I would say that 100% of women will stop ovulating. And the only hormone that is associated with ovulating is progesterone. So now I hope that makes it clear, if you are on hormone replacement, or if you're prescribing hormone replacement, is that if you want a generalized statement, the generalized statement should be the opposite of what people believe. You do need progesterone if you do or you don't have a uterus. You need progesterone. And here's the other thing I want to get across, is that most people look at the blood and they see no estrogen, and so they think you need estrogen also. That's why you look at the saliva test first. 80% of my patients aren't on estrogen. They're just on progesterone, because I can see what's really happening in the tissue and not just what is circulating in the blood. So that is why saliva testing gives you much more information than you could find in blood testing. And again, I know I'm not the only one talking about this, but it's so hard to change marketing and public opinion and what the public thinks is true. And we think a lot of things are true, but I want you to really get clarity about this and not just follow what your girlfriend said, or what this one doctor said, or what one person, even me. Question what I'm saying. Look it up. Go ask ChatGPT. Now, I will tell you, ChatGPT is going to like look at everything that's on the internet, so you have to be careful. but look up some specific things. I actually have a school that you could join for free, and you could get a lot of information there. We have it on our website. We'll have all of that in the description in the podcast. All right. So, but this is something I just want. I really want you to write that down and put that somewhere we can. Is that even though I don't have a uterus or whatever, if I'm menopausal, you must have progesterone. You must have it, and I will tell you that I've talked about this, and some people have an adverse reaction to this, but I want you to make sure you get micronized progesterone. It's usually best from a compounding pharmacy and not taking a progestin, something that does not say micronized progesterone. That's what you want to look for. There we go. All right, so let's go to the next. I'm trying to make sure I'm making good time here. All right, hot flashes are only about estrogen. Wow, I see this. That's what I'm saying. We're so focused on estrogen, and and you've already seen this. If a woman gets estrogen and they don't have enough progesterone, a lot of times it may take away the hot flashes, but it may not. But a lot of times it increases their fat, so they start to gain weight, which is very distressing to women. If you have too much estrogen and not enough progesterone, there's other issues, especially if you have a uterus. You must use progesterone. And I always tell people you never take estrogen by itself, whether you do or do not have a uterus. You always have to balance it with progesterone because estrogen will cause things to grow that you don't want to grow, like breast cancer. That's why they always look at does it have an estrogen receptor or not, because then they can manipulate it. So, anyway, we know that estrogen causes female sensitive tissue to grow. So that's why you don't want to just give estrogen to get rid of one symptom. You have to make sure you're giving it in the right amount and you have it balanced by progesterone. And again, that's why I like to use progesterone only so that I don't have to worry about increasing this woman's risk of breast cancer. And you can talk about a lot of things, but that is a woman's worst fear is breast cancer. And that is why I want to really know what is going on, not just what I think is happening because I have a test that really doesn't tell me what I want. All right. So this is the gaining weight one, and I may wait for this one until after the break because this is something I think women really need to understand because a lot of times women come in and one they'll say, "Hey, my doctor put me on this estrogen. I gained 20, 30 pounds, but he tells me my labs don't show that I have too much estrogen, so I don't know why I'm gaining all this weight." Again, it's because all of this is happening in the tissue. It's not happening in the blood. So I'll leave you with that as a little teaser because I know women want to know how they can lose weight or control their weight again. So let's go to the break and then we'll be right back.
We are going to a quick break, so stay with us as we explore the ageless blueprint right here on W4HC Radio and Talk4 TV. An ancient secret with a modern twist for better health and vitality. Dr. Taylor will be right back. Taking care of your health shouldn't mean taking a handful of pills every day. At Taylor MD Formulations, they create doctor-developed supplements that combine the best natural ingredients so you get the results you need with fewer pills. Taylor MD Formulations is backed by science, designed for real life with real results. Less pills, better health, doctor approved. Shop now at TaylorMDFormulations.com and discover smarter supplements for smarter health. That's TaylorMDFormulations.com. We are back for more of Ageless Blueprint. Once again, let's join Dr. Taylor for more insights and research on the ancient secret to better health and a better life in modern times. Here's your host, Dr. Eldred Taylor.
All right, welcome back. It is Wednesday. It's Ageless Blueprint time. And today we're talking about how hormone replacement does not necessarily mean hormone clarity. And that's what is missing in our hormone replacement arena. There's just no clarity. There's so many people talking about so many different things. And people are talking about this new study about this, new study about that. I always say, does this new study correspond with what I know with about how the body actually works? If it tells me that estrogen is something great without telling me how is it affecting other tissues? Is it balanced with progesterone? Because if you only look at a narrow outcome, then you're going to get a narrow answer. So you need to know what's going on in the entirety, not just this one little dot. So here's how this works. Okay? When you're stressed, because the reason why, remember I said when you stop ovulating at menopause, then what happens is at menopause and ovulation, you stop ovulating. Now, here's another thing that can stop you from ovulating is stress. So when you're stressed, your body says this is not the time to put a physical stressor on you like pregnancy. So what it does is it says we are going to stop ovulation. We can't afford for you to get pregnant. You're already stressed. Stops ovulation. So what does that stop? It stops progesterone. Now, if we're in the arena of weight gain, remember progesterone burns fat for energy. So if you stop ovulating, you're going to have a abundance of estrogen, and estrogen is going to start to store that fat. And here's the problem: is that estrogen stores fat, and then that fat tissue makes more estrogen. So you have this vicious cycle. Estrogen stores the fat, and then the fat makes more estrogen. That is a real problem. And that's why women feel like they lose control of their weight. They say, hey, look, I haven't changed a thing. I'm even working out more. I'm doing intermittent fasting. I'm doing all of this. And either I'm not losing a pound or I'm still gaining weight. But you have to look at cortisol. Is the cortisol stopping ovulation? And progesterone. If it's stopping ovulation, how much progesterone is she making and how much estrogen is she making? If you look in the blood, you won't see all of this activity that's happening inside the cell. But if you look in the saliva, it tells you, it gives, I won't tell you, it tells you exactly what's going on. It gives you an idea of the distribution of these two hormones or any hormone. So it gives you an idea of the distribution. So even if you get a blood test and it's sodium, potassium, that's a normal range in the blood, but the heart and the brain may have a totally different concentration. But we know if we see this level in the blood, that then your sodium and potassium everywhere else should be okay. That's the same way with saliva. I'm not telling you that saliva is telling you exactly what went to your uterus or your brain, but we know, or I know clinically, that if it's in a certain balance, that usually most of these symptoms go away. And if I look at their cortisol and I show them what is going on, they get clarity. They see what's going on. So if you give them the right information, that gives them clarity. But if you give them confusing information, they're never clear. So they're always going to bounce around. And that's another reason why I started this podcast, so that you can have a constant reminder of what is actually physiology and what is actually marketing and a fad or the latest development. So that's what I want you to understand. That's why I'm trying to break these myths. Oh, this is a real big one. PCOS is the problem. And I just want to read this, is that what medicine provides is a lot of labels. Okay, they look at symptoms in a cluster and they call it a syndrome. So when you see polycystic ovarian syndrome or anything like that, is that it's saying it's a syndrome. It says it's a cluster of symptoms, and we're not quite sure where it comes from or how to cure it or how to treat it, but we know these symptoms go together. So when you look at polycystic ovary, these these cysts that the ovary makes prior to ovulation, what they do is as the cyst grows, it makes estrogen, and the estrogen makes the tissue and the lining of the uterus grow. So if you don't ovulate and you have polycysts, you're going to make a lot of estrogen and you're not going to make a lot of progesterone. And so that's where the symptoms come in, because the lab patterns will tell you what is actually going on. So PCOS is not the problem. Anovulation or no ovulation is the problem. You have too much estrogen, you don't ovulate, you don't make enough progesterone. Now, I'm not telling you that's 100% of the time, but that is a way to understand it. Because I ask women all the time who tell me they have PCOS, I ask them, what does that mean? What does it do? How is it affecting you? Well, they'll tell me how it's affecting you, how it's affecting them, but they don't really understand what it means. What it means is that you're not ovulating, you're not making progesterone. Some of the times, this is what I do in my office. You can give them progesterone at the right time in their cycle, and most of the time, it will help to reverse this. And after a while, I've seen that now they start having regular cycles again. Once we fix their cortisol, once we help them to manage their nervous system, and once we give them progesterone to kind of prime the body to know what to do, a lot of times we'll see their cycles return. So you need to understand that PCOS, and so what the symptoms that you get with that is that when you don't have enough progesterone, your body starts to make testosterone in order to try and balance out estrogen. So it says, I know I need to balance out estrogen with something that does the opposite of what it does. And testosterone is the closest person around, or the closest hormone around. So you start making testosterone. What does that do? It gives you acne. It makes you have chin hairs. It makes you lose hair where you want it and get hair where you don't want it. That's the same thing that happens in menopause when you see these older women with thin hair and they have a mustache because progesterone has gone away and testosterone has tried to come to balance things out. But then it causes its own problems because that is not the normal balancing hormone. So I think that's key to understand, is that testosterone will try to correct the situation. So every symptom, this is why women get shuffled around, because every symptom has to be seen by a different doctor. So now, I will tell you, when you talk about antidepressants, I say gynecology made simple is like this, is that if a woman is young, less than 40, 45, she comes in with any problem, she's going to get birth control pills. Now, it's not telling her what the problem is, it's just she's got irregular bleeding, no lab values are telling her anything, but we give birth control pills. Now, if you are over 45, we gave you hormone replacement and we ask you if you had a uterus. And then I say, if none of that works, you get an antidepressant so you don't feel so bad about how bad you feel. Or you'll get sent to a psychiatrist, or your PCP will tell you, oh, let's just put you on an antidepressant because your labs are normal. And again, we say, well, let's put you on these sleep medications since you can't sleep because your labs are normal. Let's send you to a psychiatrist and say you have an anxiety disorder because your labs are normal. Let's use these weight loss drugs because I don't know why you're gaining weight because your labs are normal. And then I'm not sure why you don't have any libido, but I know testosterone helps with libido in men, so let's try it in women. And I will tell you is that testosterone is tightly associated with libido in men, but not so with women. And now some women will swear by it, but I will tell you that I also see either the same or maybe more women complain that it may have worked for a while, but they didn't want to deal with the side effects, or it didn't work at all. Because I don't think that testosterone can cover up a cortisol pattern abnormality. And it doesn't cover up well a progesterone deficiency. That's why you want to know, what hormone is the problem? Is it in balance or out of balance? How can I get it back in balance? That's how you keep from sending these patients to 5 different doctors thinking they have 15 different symptoms, when it's all can be explained if you understand the menstrual cycle and you don't succumb to these myths and acting as that they're a fact. You need to be able to have enough information to make good decisions, ask the right questions, reject the wrong treatment plan, and understand whatever you're going to do. Don't ever do anything that you don't understand completely, that you don't have clarity about. Just don't do it. Wait till you get enough information to be clear. I always ask patients, if I tell them something they're unsure, I was like, look, you research it for yourself. I want you to come back and say, I know this is right for me because of all of the information I've told them and what they have researched on their own. That is a patient who is clear, and she's going to be an active part of her recovery, or her feeling better, or her, getting back to feeling like she felt before. All right, let's go to the next one. See how much time I have. All right, so we good. All right, if your doctor says everything is normal, nothing is wrong. So I just went through that. They're going to tell you, hey, we're going to send you to all of these people because your lab tests say that everything's normal. Now, I will tell you again, a lot of times they grab at that low testosterone. The other thing that we were always taught is that if they're tired, you look at their blood count. If they're exhausted, you look at their blood count. What is their hemoglobin and hematocrit? And we also look at the ferritin. Now, I've had a lot of patients come in and say, my ferritin is low. I think that's why I'm tired. And again, I think that can be a problem. Ferritin is where you store iron so that you have enough iron to make new blood cells. So I understand why that could be an issue. But most of the time when I talk to these women, they have signs of having a cortisol problem, and they also have a sign of maybe estrogen and progesterone problems, because usually they can't sleep, they're exhausted, they're all of these things. And so that's why you have to broaden your horizon a little bit, and not just say, oh, if the blood tests are normal, then I need to go and look somewhere else. So common problems with standard testing: incomplete testing panels, symptom management over root cause. We just try, and it's almost like whack-a-mole. You got one symptom, let's whack it with this. You got this other symptom that pops up, let's whack it again. And then this other symptom pops up, so you whack that one. So normal does not always mean healthy. So, and again, you can't think that this one blood test tells you everything about your body. It just doesn't. And and one of the reasons why I did this ageless blueprint is partly for me and my wife too, is to say that even though we're getting older or more mature, that we still have a lot of wisdom that we can distribute. I try to do it in my office. I try to do it in the podcast. I try to do it, is to distribute some of my life experience, and that's how you get wisdom. And I still don't think I'm wise, but some of the things through this experience I have found to be clinically true. And so I've been using saliva testing for a long time, and nothing has given me more clarity that I can distribute to the patient or to my client than having a clear picture of what is going on. And so I don't have to play this trial and error game with, hey, what did this drug do? What symptoms are you having? All right, let's switch to this one. And you end up going 3, 6, 9, 12 months without an answer, and that just causes more stress, or just causes more confusion. So I don't want you to think that your best years are over. If we can get you back to feeling like you felt before, feeling like yourself again, then there's all kinds of possibilities as you age. And I see these women who are distraught at 40, even women at 20, 25, who are having these issues, and they think they're never going to have children. They're always going to feel like this. And that's not the way it is. Okay. There are solutions out there, but you can't keep doing the same thing and thinking something different is going to happen. Just doesn't happen. Hey, Rebel, we have questions at all?
Yes, we
Oh,
do.
okay, go ahead.
Pop them up on.
Yes. Oh, if you have high cholesterol, is that a buildup or a lack of the correct hormones? Now, I will tell you that stress sometimes can increase your cholesterol, because it's trying to open up more cholesterol for you to make more cortisol. But I would not necessarily tell you that the hormones are causing you to have a high cholesterol. Uh, but I will tell you that probably whatever you're doing to cause a high cholesterol is affecting your hormones. Okay, so if you are overweight, then that's going to make you make more estrogen. It's going to cause you to not ovulate as regularly. So if you have a high cholesterol, whatever's causing that is probably also has a contributing factor to whatever hormone symptoms that you are experiencing. Okay. So how would you know if you are having a hormone issue? Well, it's usually symptoms. And if you're a woman, is it happening? Are you having regular cycles? Or can you clock anything by your cycle? Okay. Can you say a week before my cycle this happens, or a week after my cycle, or a week or two before my cycle, my whatever underlying issue you may have? Maybe your thyroid works, thyroid medicine doesn't work, or there's some underlying problem that you have. My acne gets worse. So those would be hormone issues. Now the classic ones is hot flashes, can't sleep, weight gain. Everything that I've been talking about are usually hormonally, it's a hormonal involvement in it somewhere, somehow, because hormones are a big part of your whole system, because you are actually created to reproduce. In ancient times, you needed to live long enough to propagate the species. So that's how important reproduction is. That is like the main goal in life is to reproduce. And that's why everything has to be just right for that to happen. So what if women don't have low testosterone, if it's not tested from puberty, how would anyone know it's high or low? Now I will tell you that is the problem, is that testosterone in the blood is normally low. Uh, in when I was learning about this, they said a woman can be hirsute. That means she can have totally masculinized presentation, or how she looks or whatever. She can be hirsute, have hair all over, and the blood testosterone can still be low because again, it's all about the tissue. So let's look at this. The blood is a reservoir for hormones, and only a small amount of it actually goes into the tissue. So what happens is there could be a small or no change in the blood level, but if instead of 1% going to the tissue, 2% goes there, now the tissue level has doubled, and in the blood you can't even notice it because it was only 2 out of the 100 testosterones actually went into the tissue. So that is the problem, is that you don't know if you have a low or a high testosterone, and women normally have a low testosterone. What would tell me that you needed testosterone? If you were losing muscle mass, that might be an issue, but normally testosterone is not a female major hormone, just like estrogen is not a primary male hormone, but men need a little bit of estrogen also. Okay, so your men can aromatize testosterone and estrogen too. Just how women make estrogen in their fat tissue, men can make it also. So that is why you want to make sure that you're not giving too much testosterone. You're not giving a male hormone to a woman or too much woman hormone to a male. So if you are gaining weight after you stop having your period, would it mean you are needing progesterone? More than likely, because hey, what did you learn today? When progesterone goes down, it stops burning the fat that estrogen stored. So you are asking, by you asking that question, I know you're starting to understand and get clarity. More than likely, you may need progesterone. Now, the best way to find out is through saliva testing. But if you want to experiment, and you can, because progesterone really doesn't hurt you, it doesn't cause cancer or anything like that, because it's actually blocking or slowing down growth. So if you wanted to try it, you can. There's progesterone creams, there's progesterone prescriptions, there's supplements, and you can go to our website, and we can show you some of the things that can help you there. All right. So yes, how do you get your body to start making it again? You can't start ovulation again. Okay, so you really can't. Now you can use Vitex or chaseberries. We have a supplement that has that in there. It can help you to make a little bit more progesterone, especially if you're premenopausal. It can help balance you out, but you can't really get your body to make it. That's why it's so crucial, and that's why I say, if you want to have a blanket statement, is that 100% of women will stop ovulating at menopause, and that means 100% of women are going to have a serious deficiency in progesterone. So did you say the cycle can return after hormones are regulated? Why would anyone? No, not in menopause. I'm talking about someone with PCOS. PCOS happens in women who are young, okay, 10, 15, 20, because they haven't really started to ovulate on a regular basis. All right. So I'm not talking about postmenopausal women. No, that's not going to start again. But in PCOS, they usually have no period, or they real heavy periods, or they're real irregular periods. So you give them the progesterone for the 2 weeks each month, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, and sometimes their period will come back normally, and now all of their PCOS symptoms go away too. Do you prescribe birth control pills after a woman has stopped her cycle? No. Okay, no, because you're not, when you stop your cycle, you're not low in birth control pills, because that birth control pill does not have progesterone in it. It has a progestin in it. And a lot of times, if you have that plus estrogen, that increases your weight gain, because now you don't have progesterone anymore slowing down or burning the fat for energy. It is a substitute progesterone, it's called a progestin. So no, you don't take birth control pills after your cycle has stopped if you're postmenopausal. All right. Do you use iodine? The use of iodine change? Yes, iodine is a building block for thyroid hormone. Okay, when you talk about, there's something called T4 and T3, thyroid 4 and that thyroid 3. So T4 has 4 iodines on it. T3 has 3 iodines on it. You actually have to remove one of the iodines for you to have the active form of the hormone, which is T3. So another thing I want to tell you about menopause, are we almost done? Another thing I want to tell you about menopause is that estrogen actually slows down or blocks thyroid hormone. So that's why a lot of women at menopause are told that they are hypothyroid, but really it's the estrogen that's making them look hypothyroid. If you balance the estrogen with progesterone, now that's burning the fat for energy, and now they don't look hypothyroid anymore. All right, how much time do we have? I'm done. I didn't put my glasses on, so I couldn't see the timer. All right, so we're done here. See you next week. I hope to have a guest next week, but I'm going to talk about it. So hopefully you learned something. Hopefully we burst a few myths, and I will see you next week.
Thanks for joining Dr. Taylor today. If you missed any part of this show, just check out the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Ageless Blueprint is every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on W4HC Radio at W4HC.com. Together, we discovered ancient secrets to better health through science and spirituality made for modern times. Until then, feel free to check out agelessblueprintpodcast.com and TaylorMDFormulations.com for more information.